Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Arbitrarium podcast. Today, our guest is David Perry, who is the Grand Sultan of the Atlantis Caliphate. And today we're going to be talking about archetypes, something that I don't really know that much about, but I've always found an interesting topic, as I fancy myself as a very bad and irregular writer. So, figured knowing more about this kind of thing would be useful. On the fact-checking and moderating front, we have Kirky.
Hey yo, what up?
So,
My street cred is impeccable.
what do you know about archetypes, Dave?
Well, archetypes are... You've got a few sources for types of archetypes, I guess. I mean, a lot of them are sourced from Carl Jung, and you've got a few archetypes there. And then you've got carryover with Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey and all the things that he wrote about. You've got archetypes there. A lot of them match up pretty well. We're going to stick pretty much to Carl Jung's the 12 archetypes that it's sort of been boiled down to.
So, what are they? First off, I guess.
An archetype it's sort of an essence of a personality that has arisen over time through many stories. So if you overlay a lot of particularly mythological and ancient stories, you'll come up with common characters or character types, and those common character types have been sort of essentialized as archetypes.
Okay.
So.
Why do you think they've stuck around for so long? I mean, thousands of years.
Well, the theory behind, as far as I've been able to tell, behind why they've stuck around for as long as they have is because we all identify with them in one way or another, and many people identify with either one or just a few of the archetypes more than others, and because they're based in personality types, right? So people, if you're talking about something like the Big Five personality, the Ocean personality wheel, most people fall somewhere on that. And those archetypes, they're embodied personalities over time. And so that's why people tend to associate with them as well as they do. I think a lot of people, if you ask them, well, I mean, you can go on to like BuzzFeed or anything like that, and you'll find quizzes like which character archetype are you, those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. And then I think the most popular one right now is probably, and has been for a while, is probably the character alignment chart, which isn't specifically archetypes, but it falls into broad character moralities, right? I mean, that's what the alignment is. And if I'm not mistaken, that spawned up out of tabletop RPGs.
Yeah, the alignment system.
Yeah, the alignment system.
I don't know if that tracks very well. Using alignment as kind of a stand-in for archetype, I don't. Because I'm pretty really sure you could have a lawful evil hero.
Yeah.
I mean, Elric of Melniboné, for instance. If you're familiar with that character.
I'm not, and the audience may not be, so it'd be good.
God, I can't remember who wrote it. Could you look up who wrote Elric of Melniboné? I think it's...
Sounds French.
Moorcock? Someone Moorcock?
Elric, Holly Hoobity Wuddy.
we need a sound for that.
First word sounds like
Elric. E-L-R-I-C.
That's probably right.
Of
C-H, yeah.
You'll get close enough. Of
M-E-L.
M-E-L-N-I-B-O-N-E.
Melniboné?
Yes.
Yeah.
Looks like Melnibone.
Yeah, Melnibone.
But it's pronounced You're
bad at this.
Elric of Melnibone is a fictional character created by English writer Michael Moorcock.
Okay.
Michael Moorcock.
Fortunate last name.
And it's Melnibone. It's got the accent above the E.
There's no D, there's an N. Melnibone.
I'm sorry, Melnibone. But it's still Bonnet. It's not bone.
Yeah.
Right.
Sophisticated.
But he's not a very good guy, Elric. He uses dark powers to support his own physique. He's functionally immortal, though very frail. Often does, I mean, we'll call it drugs for brevity on this.
Wait, so he uses magic to maintain his physique, but he's frail?
His
what kind of bullshit mage person, is he?
Okay. That kind of thing.
So he's just barely hanging on to life with magic?
With magic, and then uses
cursed magic, right? Like unicorn's
potions
blood.
and unguents to boost his own physical capability in combat. And he just kind of goes kind of out of his way to be a dick at times. He kills all of his friends with a sword.
Is he the hero of the story?
Yes.
Okay.
He is the hero of this story.
I'm getting super big, like, Geralt vibes from The Witcher.
Oh, yeah.
I'm guessing there's a reason for that.
There is, because...
is this that story?
Yes.
Okay.
So, I'm going to... Elric of Melniboné was... he's known as the White Wolf. He tries to be apolitical in his wanderings, but often gets pulled into political things that he wants no part of.
Sounds exactly like The Witcher.
Exactly. Or
any RPG, for that matter.
The writer of The Witcher plagiarized Elric.
See, Garrett says plagiarized, but there's an argument that it is a active, what's the word?
Homage.
Homage, yes, to the story.
Which is spelled with an H.
Yes, it is. Homage.
Yeah, you bloody American. You keep talking. I'm going to look into this plagiarism thing.
Okay. But as an example, I think you could have a hero archetype who is not necessarily lawful good or even on the good spectrum.
Oh, yeah. No, the alignment chart and the character archetypes, that's not a one-to-one carryover. You can have different archetypes that bear different moral alignments. It's very useful in tandem with those two things when you're building a character, just to flesh them out.
For a D&D character.
No, actually for literary characters, for cartoon characters. I teach that to my students.
I hear build a character, and I think D&D.
Well,
because that's what I'm most familiar with.
Conceptualize a character.
Yes. Let's pull out the $10 words when a 2-cent one will work.
Conceptualize is not a $10 word.
This is the Arbitrarium. We can say what we want.
Okay. Conceptualize is not a $10 word.
You're a $10
See,
word.
now
Get
you're
out of here.
outvoted.
I mean, it has more than 10 letters. Ooh.
Does it?
Yes.
I've never counted them.
12 letters.
It's barely over 10, so... I mean, if you round down, it's 10.
Right, so where were you going with this?
I don't know.
What did we want to talk about?
Right.
Russ?
I'm sorry, I misspoke. 13.
And recently, we've kind of striven for, we need to make the most original story. I'm talking we in society kind of thing. We need to make things as original as possible for whatever reason, but these archetypes stick up in even these things. Can you write a story without using these archetypes in some way, shape, or form?
I've not come across a story that completely abandons all of these archetypes, whether willfully or accidentally. And I think the reason for that is because the personality, like human personality does have its limits, right? I mean, we have
maybe yours
I would
does.
say a particular set of emotions, although they vary quite a bit and they blend into each other. I mean, it's complex, but it's still a limited set of emotions. And because we have a limited set of emotions, our personalities have, while they still vary quite a bit, there are still limits to them. I mean, when you come across, when you're talking to your friends, you'll talk about somebody that you met or somebody that you know, and you'll say something along the lines of, well, they're this type of person. That's why you do that. Because you run across people that have really, really similar really, really similar personalities, and that's because you're seeing how those elements of personality blend.
Right. And you said Jung earlier, Jungian archetypes, and he wasn't exactly a writer. I mean, fiction.
No, he wasn't a fiction writer, but he was a very prolific writer.
Yeah, you know what I meant.
He wasn't a fictional writer.
No.
That's not what I was saying.
He paved the way in psychology.
Well, I mean...
Arguably.
I mean, Freud paved the way for psychology, and then Jung was like, well, we could do better. You did really good, but we
Let me
could do better.
rephrase. He is...
That's a great way to sum that up.
Jung
was literally just, let me rephrase that.
I would say he was... he paved the way for modern, but modern psychology. Because he is the second interpretation of... Yes, I
There's
agree
definitely an argument to be made for
Yes.
that. It's kind of weird, though, because people are, not to get too deep into this part of it, but people argue
Why not?
about Jung's, here's a $10 word for you, penchant
Ooh.
For diving into like what might seem like mysticism when he's talking about personality and archetypes and how all these things. Well, there's a spirituality to it. It's a secular spirituality. Jung wasn't particularly religious, but
right.
Not many psychologists are.
So, I'm gonna say, Jung studied the classics along with psychology, and then kind of merged these together. Or does this spring completely out of the psychological studies?
I actually don't know how much of what types of fiction Jung read about. I'm not like a Jung expert or anything like that. I don't know what types of fiction he read about. I know that he was very, very much not really inspired by, maybe inspired by, we'll use that. He was definitely influenced by Nietzsche more than many other writers. It was one of his major influences.
Nietzsche was inspired by Jung.
No.
Oh, it's the other way around there?
Nietzsche came before Jung.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shows
You
what
don't?
I know.
Yeah, brah.
Looks like I'm the what is it?
I think you know you're...
The innocent archetype on this one?
I've known
Naive.
you too long for that. That part of your personality was coming out, maybe.
Jesus.
That's a good direction we could go at a certain point in the podcast. What archetype do we feel like we most embody, and why?
Well, what are the archetypes?
Well, let's talk about that, Kirky.
Yes, let's. Not forced banter at all. Are we going to begin with the Carl Jung archetypes?
Yeah, we're going to stick pretty
Okay.
much to those, and you can be our narrator for this.
Alright, hooray! So there, as we just discussed, 12 archetypes as defined and described by Carl Jung. First is the innocent. Which I don't know if I like this picture. I want a better one. I know it's pretty, but
It's good.
I wanted more
See, well, you got that.
description.
You've got this one, which has a lot of description. Oh, description? No.
Yeah,
see,
like...
start with the other one, and then we'll dive deeper.
I'm
because-
sorry,
the
listeners, if you
baby.
can't see these pictures.
Yeah, the listeners need to.
Where did the baby go?
I think you closed out
If I
of
had
it.
$1 for every time I said that. I'd have
$2.
$2.
Okay, click out of it. Sorry, listeners. And
We can edit this out.
Scroll down. Scroll
I'm all
down.
the way down.
What did you do?
I did nothing.
Oh, you went to a different page. That's what you did.
No, I didn't.
Camp Coral.
Coral.
You closed out of it.
See, I think we need, for this section...
Here, there you go.
when we
Okay,
decide to
thank
listen to
you. You know what?
YouTube,
Honestly,
we need the technical difficulties.
Yeah.
Someone drunk behind the camera.
I think it was worth it. So the innocent is a characterizes openness to experience, trust, and honesty. The next one we'll go with is the most classic one, the hero, who embodies strength, courage, stamina, faith, competing against great odds. You know, a hero.
I need a hero.
I know, that's the only thing I can think of when I hear that. Sage is our third one, who embodies wisdom, intelligence, clarity of thought, and rational decision-making. So for our example we talked about before, this started would be like Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Well, the sage, I would say Yoda.
Okay, so Yoda is a better example. Yes, I agree. Well, before we knew about Yoda. Spoilers!
If you haven't seen Empire Strikes Back at this point, you're either very young and don't understand what's going on, or shame on you.
Yeah, who raised you, wolves? Okay.
Innocent or jester?
So we talked about innocent. The fourth one would be lover, which is someone who embodies belonging to a group and willingness to sacrifice for others. Fifth is caregiver, someone who is compassionate, embodies steadiness, loyalty, and empathy. Number 6 is the citizen, who represents fairness, stewardship, and accountability.
I hear they have a brigade.
Wow.
Thank you.
It went right over my head.
Oh, did you catch it? 7 is the sovereign. You know,
Sovereign?
the queen.
Yeah, not the sovereign. The sovereign.
Sovereign, whatever. The queen, the king, order, stability, control, and tradition is what they represent. 8th is the magician,
I love that show.
who is full of surprise, powers of perception, intuition, and cleverness. Those cunning little fiends. 9th is the creator, and this image I'm looking at right now looks like literally every person I knew in middle school and early high school with the long draped hair over one eye.
Lots of emo swoop.
Yes, definitely some guy liner going on. But anyway, they embodied nonconformity, imagination, and sense of aesthetics.
They knew what they were doing.
They technically have an aesthetic. I don't know if it's a sense of one. 10th is the explorer.
Yeah, he looks like a pizza cutter, all edge and no point.
Don't worry, emo kids, I'm one of you. Number 10 is the explorer, who is...
She says in a denim jacket.
Fuck off. I was cold. Number 10 is the explorer, who represents independence, testing limits, bravery, and nonconformity. I feel like there's a lot of overlap in creator and that one.
There is a surprising amount.
Okay, anyway, 11th is Jester, who obviously represents humor, originality, and irreverence, aka me after a couple drinks. And 12 is the Rebel, who is represents leadership, risk-taking, individuality, bravery, and honesty, which the Rebel can also be seen as a little bit hero-like also.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Well, that's one of the things, that's all of them, but one of the things that we didn't go over that are present here are that each one of these archetypes has a sort of a positive side and a negative side. Anytime you're talking about anything having to do with personality or characters or psychology or even philosophy, there's usually like, it could be really good or it could be really bad. You can go too far.
You didn't tell me that these were really the horoscopes, just with different names. Which one of you is a lover?
That's not a coincidence.
Yes, they do have challenges. I just thought for the audience's sake, I would read it quicker.
Well, yeah, because we can talk about the negative.
Sure.
The negative parts of these character archetypes as we get into characters that embody them and characters that we like. So, you're the host, so
yeah. What do you want to start with first? Which one?
Yeah. So, Dave, which archetype or archetypes do you feel you identify with the most out of this list of?
We'll start with least, so when I say most, it doesn't seem so pretentious. I don't really see myself all that much as an explorer, because I'm not... I'm only brave in very, very specific instances. My pain tolerance is very low. Definitely not much of a rebel. So there are a few in here I definitely don't embody. Not really much on the lover end of things either. I would say I'm more along the lines of... Probably more along the lines of a sage or maybe a creator. I could see that. Parts of me when I'm writing can definitely come out as the jester. But...
I think just because you have a sense of humor doesn't necessarily mean you're the jester.
Well, there's a sense of originality and irreverence. I consider myself fairly irreverent, but maybe I'm mistaken on that.
Okay. Gonna creep around here to take a look at these.
Well, while Garrett is looking over them, I don't know what mine would be. Probably, I guess this kind of goes back to our discussion from last week, is like, what is your identity? Is it like a culmination of things, or is there just one thing that's supposed to sound the most like me?
Oh, well, the conclusion that we came to is essentially that it's a culmination of things. This is part of it.
Right, so because I'm like, I could see myself as equally a part of all of these things. Except maybe...
I wouldn't say straight equally. That would be a hell of a claim. I see a lot of magician in myself. Especially the powers of perception. I do sense like I can pick up things, like things that are unspoken, like the vibe of a room, the aura of something going on, like just knowing when someone says a certain word like hello if they're upset, But I also naturally want to fall into caregiver for our dear listeners who know that I'm a nurse. And I am compassionate, I am steady and loyal and empathetic. I am all those things, for sure. It's hard to pin me down to one thing. I think I'd probably go with caregiver because I still exhibit a lot of those things outside of my work. I would actually say caregiver definitely, and then I'd probably put sovereign up there to a certain extent.
I do like control, absolutely. You're not wrong there. I totally forgot. I was so busy with the crown imagery that I was like, yeah, I like that.
You are very orderly.
See, I'm running into
We shall have order.
There's nothing nothing in this list that I can point to as like, no, I don't. I'm not that. There's nothing that I see that I don't have any of or very little of.
I feel like you definitely can be the rebel. Minus the leadership part. You're not really a leader. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just not who you are.
See, of the traits, I wouldn't have thought of that one as being the one he's least like. I would say, and I'm going to say that.
That's the one I think he's most like.
Oh, okay. That makes
The
sense.
one he's least like?
Yeah,
that's
I'm
easy.
With
starting
the
with the
rebel.
least.
Oh, well, yeah.
Oh, sorry. The one you're least like?
Yeah. I mean, creator. The only one that I really have in that one is, well, I don't have much of a sense of aesthetics.
No.
No,
That's-
not
No,
at
you
all.
do not.
No.
But out of the three characteristics there,
That's probably the one you're least like.
probably. I don't over dramatize
I would
things.
say-
I'm certainly not a perfectionist.
I would say along those
This
lines,
podcast is evidence of that.
I would say magician is one that you're fairly low in as well.
Yeah, that's not you.
I don't know. I have a fair amount of hubris.
The hubris is part of the challenges.
Yeah.
So
I
that
know.
would be the negative aspect
I
of
know.
it.
Oh, you cutting fellow, you.
But as far as the ones that I most identify with, rebel and citizen, maybe.
Citizen,
Yeah.
definitely. And I could see, and I'd say rebels. are
Mostly
pretty good
because it guarantees, service and citizenship. I'm all about that.
one. Okay, so when we're looking at those, I don't want to spend too much time on us because the audience doesn't
Right,
really
they don't
know
know
us
who the
that
hell we
well.
are.
They don't want to watch us take a BuzzFeed quiz.
Right.
I mean, who doesn't? That right there, the stimulation alone is just...
I loved how your eyes
breathtaking.
glazed over when you said that.
I'm telling you, we need
Just
to...
having a stroke.
We need
stroking
to
out.
have video of the podcast just to upload my reactions to things.
The plan is to eventually have a video
Element.
element to it so you can watch it on YouTube.
So whenever time
Until we get a
someone's...
camera that's inexpensive and good,
Right.
True.
we're just going to slap images up on a screen.
Anytime someone says something mildly batshit crazy and or out of nowhere, I just want the camera to pan over to me going, or me going, I'll just mimic all the Oprah memes I know. Like, anyway,
So,
continue.
being the identifying with these archetypes that we do you find that you like characters that share your traits, or ones that kind of contrast with what you kind of identify with
That's
on this?
interesting.
I never really thought about that, but as a storyteller, as a creator, that made me realize that I've created my main character for the series that I'm working on, Mallory Bash, is literally, she's the opposite of me.
So did I just display the magician cleverness trait by
You
asking
did,
that
just
question?
a bit, just a bit.
Huh.
Yeah. I guess I like creating characters that are more along the lines of some of the ones that I'm least like. So the hero character, right? Mm-hmm. So I mean, Mallory couldn't be any more different than me. I mean, she's a 10-year-old girl. She's a heroic character. She's not particularly wise. Not that I'm not saying that I am, but I would say that I tend
She's
to
also
follow
10
along
years
those.
old.
She's also 10 years old.
They're not known for their wisdom.
She's got a temper. She's not particularly conforming. She's a bit of a contrarian. That might be one of the things I share with her. I'm not a contrarian, but I can be argumentative. I will take the devil's advocate position if I think there's something to it, and I'll do that as often as possible. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I guess I'd like to create characters that aren't like me. As a writer, maybe that's a good thing because I have to learn about what those types of people are like.
Right.
And a big one was temper.
I'd like to write characters that aren't like me, but I don't know how to do that, really.
What type of characters do you?
I tend to write kind of everyman. Someone who they have a skill of some sort, but it doesn't really come in handy most of the time. And then the stories that I write, it just kind of popped. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Now I can actually be useful.
Well, actually, that is. Go ahead and keep talking. I'm gonna look at something here, because that's one of the other archetypes that you find in different lists is the Everyman.
Yeah, that was in the first one that we came up with, but yeah, I like writing people who are unprepared for things.
Isn't that everybody?
So the Everyman archetype celebrates the virtue of being the common man, giving people a sense of belonging. And no, we don't need that other part. Let's know your archetypes. Here we go. This will be a good one.
I think it's the same reference.
But the two stories that I'm thinking of are the Witch Blaster Chronicles, which basically follows two weirdos who aren't really particularly special in any one way, and then William Callender from the Lawson series, which isn't out yet, because I'm still working on it.
Let's talk about why you like the Everyman archetype. So there's some characteristics that are common to all Everyman archetypes. This is what it says. It says they enjoy the simple tastes and pleasures of life. They're democratic but not necessarily political. They believe in the concept of all for one and one for all. In an effort to create relationships, they tend to lose themselves or compromise. They are easily accepting of people as they are understanding, friendly, and inviting. They enjoy being part of a group and do not like the elite. They are usually comfortable with the status quo. They do not like pretense and are genuine. They support and encourage teamwork and are excited when everyone solves problems together. I
think that don't enjoy pretense. I think that's what really hits it on the head for me, for the Everyman that I like. Mm-hmm. They're not to say that they're not complicated, or that they have to be simple as far as characters go, but they're as honest with themselves and everyone around them as they possibly can be. I like that.
This sounds like a...
It's easy to write, too.
This sounds like a very broad description of a hobbit.
Well, I know there's a reason for that. I think maybe what you're getting at is like there's sort of a genuineness about mm-hmm. the Everyman, mm-hmm. and the genuineness is that they're genuine about the fact that they don't fully understand themselves, but they want to.
Right.
There's a desire to, and I think that's where that's where you sort of Mary Sue Everyman.
Yeah.
No, I can't really say that an Everyman is necessarily a Mary Sue, because a Mary Sue is a very specific trope.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm saying
you know what? I'm glad you brought up trope. Go on. Sorry, I interrupted you.
I mean, archetypes are.
I wrote a question while you were talking because I thought of this. It said, "Do you think archetypes differ from stereotypes and/or tropes? And if yes, why?"
Yes.
Good question.
I think archetypes are a type of trope.
Well, maybe we have to define a trope before we can argue. What does Merriam-Webster dictionary say?
Merriam-Webster's dictionary say?
I can't even get it out without laughing.
Who's Marin?
Marion?
A figurative.
She said Marin.
Trope is a figurative or metaphorical use of a word or expression. That's very vague.
That's a different thing.
That's vague to the point of non-functionality.
But that is what it is.
But a trope...
There we go.
A common or overused theme or device, a cliche.
So it doesn't have to be a cliche, but a common...
All cliches are tropes. Not all tropes are cliches.
Yeah. A phrase or verse added as an embellishment or interpretation. No, so we don't want that one. Yeah, that second one's probably the best. A common or overused theme or device. That's the closest.
Yeah.
So how does that differ from a stereotype? I spell that right here. Yes.
So,
something conforming to a fixed or general pattern is a stereotype.
Right.
Yeah. A thing which conforms to it.
You know, blondes being stupid, that's a stereotype.
Yeah.
So I feel like what we think of as stereotypes are actually cliches.
Well, actually, maybe this is a good
They're not
way to think
mutually
about
exclusive.
it. No.
Okay.
Maybe a good way to think about it is that blondes being dumb is a stereotype, but a dumb blonde is a trope.
Mm-hmm.
The assumption that, that blondes are dumb would be a stereotype, but a character who is blonde and is dumb would be a trope.
Right.
I see.
A stereotypical trope.
Yes.
But not in and of itself a stereotype.
So the stereotype.
Stereotypes are overly simplistic.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the trope is like casting the overly simplistic idea.
The trope would just be the repetition of it to the point that people can identify it.
Yeah, but
Right.
you kind of need tropes.
Yeah.
Especially in visual media.
Okay, so like the trope that like in film, it seems like I cannot talk today.
The best...
Actors who are black tend to be nominated for portraying like black only like strife, like
the
slavery,
story, yeah.
or like through the Civil War, or
Yeah.
civil rights movement, stuff
Glory.
like that. That is a huge trope with the Academy and black actors and acting.
The trope of that would be, I don't know if you could call it.
I would
say
it is a trope if like you experience like that same like story over and over again, and it's constantly the one that's recognized, but not other
that would be a
stories.
trope in reference to film in general. That
Yes,
blacks who
yes.
win Oscars
Yes.
it tends to be because they're in movies about slavery or
Yes,
something like that.
that's what I was.
Yeah, that
thank
would be
you.
a trope of filmmaking.
Correct.
My
You
favorite
phrased it
example
better
of
than I
a
could.
trope, in at least in visual media, is a leather jacket.
Yeah.
Being tough.
Because you see someone wearing a leather jacket, you immediately think they're kind of a rebel. They're going to be tough. They might not necessarily be smart, but they're going to have street smarts about them because they're wearing a leather jacket. It's the first thing you see about the character, and you're already making these assumptions.
Right.
So
Visual cues for what type of
Right.
character they are. Yeah.
So that's why I love the leather jacket as a trope.
I love the leather jacket, but for very different reasons.
As a trope,
Sure, why not?
get your kinks out of here. This is a family-friendly show, goddammit.
I think we just graduate. In my head, I just saw the rating on the podcast. Just bing!
Rated O for oh dear God.
So, archetypes are tropes given personality.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And in order to tell a story efficiently, you kind of need to have these archetypes, because you need to have tropes to tell a story with, just kind of in general.
And it's
Okay.
interesting because a lot of good stories don't have archetypes in mind specifically. It's just that's one of the things that Campbell was about. He was like, well, look, people didn't do this necessarily intentionally. They just kept coming up.
Right.
There's something like fundamentally sociological about these archetypes.
So you can't consciously not do it.
Right.
You were going to say something.
I was gonna say something, but there's popping sounds, and I'm scared. I think
It's
what
just a mouse racking a shotgun. Don't worry
oh
about
no! Oh no! Oh no!
Well, the mouse is racking
for all
the
my
shotgun,
TikTok
so-
people out there. What up?
it. He's about to, give himself a Cobain facial.
It's funny because he shot himself in the face,
With a
and that's
shotgun.
how he died.
So on Merriam-Webster's website that I can see that the viewer cannot, it underneath the definition for trope, it says the usual horror movie trope. So that's, I think, a great example then. So like that, the protagonist or the lead major character is usually a young single female who isn't understood and wants to be accepted by her group of friends. She's not really interested in sex, but she is sexy for some reason.
Yeah, she's
Yes,
the one that
sexy virgin.
If she survives, she has abstained from sex.
Right. And she's the
untarnished
smart,
version.
cunning one that can like think of how to escape quickly. Has some kind of deep emotional trauma in her past. Looking at you, Sidney Prescott from Scream. I mean, like,
That's why I love Cabin in the Woods.
See,
You've
I do
seen
love
that?
Cabin in the Woods.
I have
It
not
is-
seen Cabin in the Woods.
It's
I've heard it's a
fantastic.
nice.
It is.
nice
It's a
addition.
very good.
deconstruction of,
Yeah.
of horror movie tropes.
Yes. But then, then I'm trying to differentiate the trope from the stereotype. So, like, I thought I had an aha moment, but it's not. Like, I think the stereotype would be that
No epiphany for you.
I don't know what the stereotype would be, but the trope in horror movies is that the black guy dies first.
A trope, yes.
And that's not just in horror movies.
A trope.
That's
Oh,
just
okay,
kinda,
yes.
I was being
just in
pretentious.
So,
movies.
oh, sorry. Sorry.
Ah.
I was like, is that like atrophy? My brain
I
goes,
think we've gotten there with the trope.
yeah, for sure. Okay. I'm glad that I had a chance to ask that question because I was afraid I was going to get lost in the shuffle.
In the
Cupid shuffle.
Oh, hey, hang on. Be careful.
No.
We're at 35 minutes currently. I can edit that out if we want to do it.
Yeah.
So we want to do we going for...
Yeah, we're gonna do a commercial break.
All right, so now we're going for a commercial break. Now a word from our sponsors.
Are you looking to benefit from a brief coma without all the risks of major surgery? Does warm milk make your heart race? Curious about suicide but unwilling to commit? Then try Dr. Unsomnia's Lethargy drink. Turn down for all.
What a wonderful sponsor to have. I recommend you seek them out if you have your own project. So, from the titles of each one of these archetypes, just reading them, you can kind of figure out what are their strengths, and we describe them by their strengths. But each one of these also has a weakness, as Dave pointed out earlier, and how that's going to shape the story, and in Jung, how it's going to shape your individual weaknesses in your own psychology. So, for instance, if you kind of identify as the jester, you're probably not going to be taking that seriously even when you're trying to be serious. That's going to be a challenge you're going to run into. And you see that running into with various literary characters like Mercutio.
Oh, Mercutio.
He died because no one took him seriously when he was gravely wounded.
Mercutio.
They just thought he kept throwing out jokes when, well, to be honest, he kind of was, even though he was bleeding out. So each one of these things has
He committed to the archetype till the very end. That is dedication. That is an actor.
Well, the character, many people who played Mercutio, probably unsuccessfully as well.
He took it a little too literally with his method acting.
He played it very well, but only the once.
I get that in one take. Oh. Rest in peace.
I said what we were all thinking.
I actually wasn't. I was just thinking of some guy in community theater like, I'm going for it. This is going to be my big break.
Fuck it, we'll do it live.
Exactly.
What does that mean to play us out?
He really killed it on opening night. That one was for you, Anthony.
God.
So we're talking about the weaknesses of these archetypes, just to try to circle back from our circle jerk of comedy. So I would actually argue that most of these characters are, now when we talk about them, we define them by their strengths, but they're actually, narratively, they're more defined by their weaknesses.
Right.
Because they're useless if you don't explore their weaknesses.
Otherwise, you have a Mary Sue.
Yeah, you've got nothing. And the hero is an interesting archetype when it comes to that, because the hero is absolutely defined by their weaknesses. The hero doesn't have a journey if he doesn't or she doesn't have weaknesses.
No, yeah. We could, totally relate this to comics, comic books especially. You come for the superhero, the action, poo, poo, pow, but, people were more interested in what Peter Parker was going through as a person. What made him human. The weaknesses are what make the characters, human.
So what are Peter Parker's weaknesses, Kirky?
Peter Parker really cares about his family and his friends and, how he's going to be successful in school and in life. To him, Spider-Man is just something he can do, not like a side job, but, it's not what defines him. It's weird. Peter Parker is really the superhero. Spider-Man is really the I don't know. He's not the main character, I would argue.
See, what I found interesting about what Kirky just said was the weaknesses are the things that make you human. That kind of intrinsically tying weakness to human. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's anywhere to go from that, but I found it kind of interesting. I'd never thought about it like that before.
Well, yeah, I mean, we could think about that in terms of who is the stereotype of comic book heroes that doesn't have enough weaknesses, if any, except for the one.
That'd be Superman.
Right,
Yeah.
who just has kryptonite. That's
Which
it.
And that was an afterthought.
Right.
Yeah, the kryptonite has become a cliche.
Right.
You know, if
It's the Deus Ex Machina of superheroes,
like
right?
you know, White Claws are Kirky's kryptonite on
Listen,
that one.
they've upgraded tonight from a White Claw to a Jose Cuervo Playa Mar. When you want to look like a thirsty white bitch who with slight elegance.
How much are they paying you?
Damn it, if I can
And
get
why
a
aren't they
sponsor.
paying us?
Yeah, if I get a sponsorship from any kind of tequila brand, ayo, hit your girl up.
I am currently drinking Roku Gin.
I'm currently drinking in my own sadness.
It is aesthetically Japanese.
Is there any way to drink besides your own sadness? Asking for a friend.
I'm sure.
But anyway, so
Yeah. It's kind of. I also kind of think that it's easy to, when going to the weakness and humanity, it's real easy to point that out because, at least in our day-to-day lives, our weaknesses are kind of glaring.
we're wired to see weaknesses.
Right.
We're wired to see bad things. Because, as Peterson has mentioned, you can only be so happy, but you could be dead.
Yeah, and I've said that for years. Things could always be worse. You could be dead. I've been saying that since high school. Which was long, long ago. It seems.
I guess what I meant by like the weaknesses make them human is that it's relatable, right? Like you can't invest in a story or an archetype or like Luke Skywalker, Star Wars is we've used that as an example. If the characters aren't relatable to you, it doesn't matter that's in space and that there's it's science fiction and that there are elaborate costumes and names of everything. It's the quality of the story and the trials and tribulation that happen to the people we care about, right? That's what connects us all.
Well, it's...
We're getting to a delicate subject when it comes to learning how to write stories here. And it's that people don't like to look at stories as, especially now, they don't like to look at stories as, well, you need to be telling some kind of moral, right? We don't. We're at a point in society where we don't really like the idea of somebody preaching to us. But at the same time, people aren't interested in a story unless they learn something from it. That's what happens that's the reason why our characters need to have weaknesses, because if we have nothing to learn from the characters, we don't care. And if we want to learn something from a character, then there is sort of at the very least, an emergent moral of the story, or at least a moral of the character's arc. Mm-hmm. So, I think that's why people had a lot of problems with Superman for so long, is because what the hell does Superman have to learn? What does Superman learn?
I'm not a comic book guy. I've not read a lot of them. The only comic book, as far as Superman comic that I've read, is Red Sun, because I love alternate history, regardless of whether it's my own or not.
You mean Pinko Kami Superman?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, who, instead of truth, justice, and the American way, it was communism, Stalin, and the expansion of the Warsaw Pact.
That is quite antithetical.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Batman looked super cool in that.
He did. He had the Ushanka on.
Like Batman.
I don't know why he was in Siberia, but whatever. I'll buy that for $1. But
it's really cute that he thinks comics still cost $1. Like that was what I heard.
That was a RoboCop.
Yeah, that was a RoboCop reference.
Yeah.
Oh. Hi, my name's Kirky, and I don't get that reference on this episode of the Arbitrarium podcast.
Kirky's best impression of Kermit the Frog.
That really sadly is. I can't do it. I can't do it. I guess my question is then, based on your tying in that the whole point of a story is it used to be that there was a moral, right? Because there
still is. We just try to bury it in the narrative.
I guess my question is, I lost it.
When you were talking about story and things happening to these characters that we care about, it's those weaknesses that make us care about them. Because the story, regardless of what happens, if you have good characters and you care about those characters and you're invested in them,
right?
You've at least got that, and that's about 3/4 of the battle.
Well, why do we care about the weaknesses? Why do the weaknesses make us so interested in the character?
Because I think we can see them in ourselves.
For sure.
That's a big part of it.
I think that's the biggest part of it.
Like Peter Parker being worried about, like, obviously he wants to protect his neighborhood from criminal activity, but he still like comes home and is really stressed out about if he's going to have enough time and sleep to finish his or study for his calculus final or whatever. I know it seems arbitrary to us now.
I think you're projecting.
I'm not projecting because we are not in high school nor are interested in calculus if we ever were. But we can all relate to feeling like we don't have enough time to prepare for something and feeling overwhelmed by that. Right?
Yeah, I think the identifiability of the character is half of it. Almost precisely half of it. I think the other half of it is, well, it's okay to identify with the character. That's a really, really good thing. But the other part of that is, once you identify with the character, what you're looking for is how are they going to fix this problem that I can recognize.
Right, but that's more the story.
Yeah.
On that, I'm talking about the initial investment of the character.
Yeah.
I'd say the weaknesses of that character make us invested in them more than anything else.
Sure.
Maybe if they have some sort of special, that's the hook.
Right. But the sinker is the weakness.
Right.
So the hook
what
is
really
like
reels you in.
Right.
To use a fishing analogy.
Sure. I get it. I fish.
In case that wasn't clear to you, that was in fact a fishing analogy.
Did the fish take the bait? We'll find out on next week's episode.
We had it fact checked.
So I guess I have a question then for you, Garrett, since this is your this is your topic. So I
admitted at the start I don't know much about it.
It's okay. It's okay not to know.
It's not. I want to be infinite.
Learning is half the battle.
There's a word for that, but I have forgotten it. I just saw it. Wait a minute. I'll figure it. It's
Kirky asked me a question.
My question is: so there are archetypes that we know of for stories, and we were talking before we started the podcast recording about like a hero and an anti-hero. Like there is now becoming like an anti-hero movement, right? Like of the protagonist is not necessarily someone you cheer for or want to cheer for. Maybe isn't necessarily good or bad. So my question is there like an anti-archetype? Are there now becoming archetypes that are a little non-conformative, not old-fashioned?
They have an archetype for that.
They do. Well, exactly. Are there, so like, well, I often think of comic book characters, but there are some comic book characters that are nuanced, and there really isn't a sense of morality there.
Marvel's good at that. That's
Marvel is very good at that.
The first one what popped in my head was the Punisher.
Mm-hmm. That's a great example.
But
absolutely,
yeah, you're gonna have hero and anti-hero and villain and anti-villain, but those are more roles in the story. Not so much a character archetype. Because, I mean, I suppose with an anti-hero, and I'm just spitballing here, if we look at Frank Castle, the Punisher, he fits somewhere on this archetype thing. But an anti-hero, it's more about the motivation as to why they're doing something than their actual personality, I guess. Is what I'm going with here. Did that make any sense?
More about their motivation than their personality.
Right.
Well, with Frank Castle, I can see why you would think that, because his motivation. Now, Frank Castle's an interesting character because he is a person who lies to himself almost every moment of every day.
It's true as well.
Frank Castle's whole thing is, what is the quote? It's not revenge. It's punishment. It's like no, it's revenge. Mm. It's always been revenge. That was the catalyst, was revenge. It doesn't matter what he tells himself, it's still revenge. And it continues to be revenge because the revenge didn't do what he thought it would do. So he gave it a different name and expected it to change things, and it didn't. Polymathy, by the way, is the word I was looking for. That is
wanting to be infinite?
Wanting to know everything. The desire to know everything, or the actuality of knowing everything. Usually it's in reference to a character who wants to know everything.
Okay.
Polymathy. What are you looking up here?
I've heard someone described as a polymath.
Oh, sorry. Polymathy, damn it. Let me see this for a sec. Yeah, see, that's what polymath. That's what a polymath actually is. I got the word wrong. Hang on. Continue talking, so the audience has something to listen to.
Right.
Words.
They're
Yeah, polymathy is somebody who takes disparate ideas and is able to bring them together.
okay. So going back, yeah, with an anti-hero, they have, their archetype's qualities, but I'd say their strengths outweigh their qualities. And it also depends on how it's used in the story that defines whether or not they're a hero, anti-hero, villain, anti-villain.
Okay.
Is it possible to write a story? Well, Dave looks like he wants to say something.
Oh, no, I was just going to real quick intercut here. Pantomath. Pantomath is the word I was looking for. A person who wants to know or knows everything. Back to the topic at hand.
I was going to ask, is it possible to write a story without using archetypes?
I don't think it is.
I don't think it is either.
Well, and not make it a good story.
I'm reticent to ever use absolutes, but I've not been able to think of a character that doesn't fit one of those or multiple archetypes.
This leads into another question I had about archetypes on this. What successful subversions of archetypes have you seen?
Generally, when you're subverting an archetype, all you're really doing is leading the audience to believe that the character is one archetype and then revealing that they're actually another.
So, like Righteous Kill?
Yeah, that would be a good one. Yeah.
But you're not really subverting the archetypes themselves. You're just, playfully misleading.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess the real question that we're trying to figure out is there a character that doesn't fit one of these archetypes?
Or a character that fits all of them.
All of them? Oof. I don't know. I definitely can't think of a character that doesn't fit any of them. Because the archetypes span the personality wheel.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't think of... You'd have to be outside of the human personality wheel in order to not be any of these archetypes.
I'm trying to think. I can think of really good examples for a lot of these, but I'm having a really hard time thinking of a common popular culture reference to, like, a citizen.
Let me read it again real quick, just to be citizen. Fairness, stewardship, and accountability. The challenges are righteousness and recklessness.
Johnny Rico, Starship Troopers.
See, I'm not as familiar with that particular character.
To a T.
Well, there you go.
A more common popular culture reference. How about that?
That's actually fairly common for science fiction, so I'll give you that.
Okay.
But
I meant, like, mainstream.
more so.
Well, now you're asking me to comment on things that I don't know a lot about.
For sci-fi, that actually is
You brought a knife to a
mainstream.
gunfight, bitch.
Who said this was a fight? I thought this was just a friendly discussion.
I was just playing Pinochle.
Jacks. We play jacks here.
All right, let me go get my broadsword.
So a really common citizen, right? So in pop culture, fairness, stewardship, accountability.
Oh.
But the challenges are righteousness and recklessness. That
Okay.
makes it difficult.
Okay, so I get
Because
this
if you're
now.
just looking at the positive characteristics, I mean, Ron Weasley would fall into that. But then he doesn't fall into the challenges.
I would
Batman.
Say, I would say book one, yes. Book Ron. Movie Ron, no. I agree with you there. I thought of, like, okay, so I think a good example of a citizen would be all I can think of right now is, like, anytime Harrison Ford has been wronged in a movie when he plays like a police officer or a lawyer or something like that.
Do you mean Harrison Ford?
Yes,
So-
Harrison Ford.
Air Force One?
Okay, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I was thinking
You killed
Batman.
my wife!
Give me back my family.
I
Yes.
mean, any man who swings from high rises probably has a pretty good reckless streak through him,
True.
and he is rather righteous
Oh, yeah.
to an extreme. On
He
that.
does have he believes in fairness, that's for sure. He's definitely very lawful. Stewardship.
I mean, that's what he's doing for Gotham. That's his way of
True.
doing it.
And
Trying to be-
accountability, that's the same thing. It's,
Okay.
you do this thing, there's gonna be justice.
Okay.
Yeah, and does he hold himself accountable? That's the question. That's part of it.
I think that's a big challenge for Batman. I think he tries to, but doesn't always succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably one of his biggest challenges, one of his biggest internal conflicts. Because he knows that he's a vigilante, and there's part of him that resents himself for that.
Depending on which Batman.
Well, yeah.
Adam West Batman was not concerned.
No. The only thing Adam West Batman was concerned about was how to get rid of a bomb. Unfortunately
or
for
get
him,
my
some
favorite
days.
one, get a shark off the bat helicopter.
Well, no, he figured that out. You need the shark
Yeah.
repellent spray.
Right, and that's why is that on the helicopter? Under what situation? Obviously that one.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
So yeah, there's a few good examples of citizen archetypes.
I wonder if you can have a plot of a film or television. Well, television is a bad example because television, usually you can build character over time, right?
Yeah.
Which is why television is so appealing. But with film, I think you could have archetypes, or you could make a plot without archetypes if you don't give your characters any substance.
So a bad story.
Yeah.
No. I've seen plenty of really good films where a plot unfolds, but you don't really know anything about the characters, like personality-wise, their role. You're looking at me
And
like
you
I'm
enjoyed
crazy.
this story?
Yeah.
Wait, no. I think she has a point on that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Most war movies are like that.
Yes. Thank you. I'm trying to think of things where like there's a clear
Where-
conflict, but there is no sense of like differentiating any other person from another person. There's nothing that makes anyone stand out or special, gives them their own characteristics or
Right.
challenge. It's just like a general human pathos moment.
Oh, you mean the Everyman?
Yeah, which is not technically one of Carl Jung's, but yes. But we did discuss that.
We're stepping back and we're looking at humanity as its own character.
Okay. Ooh, that could be the 13th archetype.
That's the Everyman. It's already one of them.
I
That's
know.
not
Well,
exactly
it's
one
not
of them,
exactly
but
one, yes.
yeah.
But yes.
Mysterious 13th flavor
But
of
yes,
humanity.
that is a great example then, because
Unlocked by Everclear.
because there are plenty of stories I've read or seen that you don't really know much about the character, but you definitely have that connection of empathy for sure.
Right. Those stories are very much event driven.
Yes.
As
yes.
an example, I can't even
Biopics.
remember the guy's name. The fighter pilot from Dunkirk.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You don't really you hear his last name, which I can't remember.
I wouldn't lump a biopic on
You
it.
never learn his first name, and all you really see is what he does, which is flying around in a plane at Dunkirk. That's what he does. He just does what he does. It's kind of hard to figure out an archetype on one dogfight.
Well, one other thing we might actually think about when we're talking about stories in those terms is that the writer is allowing the viewer to overlay the hero archetype onto those characters.
It's like the faceless, something like that.
We sort of apply specifically we apply the hero archetype to that character because we're just used to the hero being, okay, this is our main character, okay, they're the hero. So we expect them to just sort of go through the general challenges and overcome them in some way and blah, 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 blah. And
Slay the Dragon, take that off the list.
Interesting.
But yeah, I think
Confuse the Cyclops, blimp, there it is.
the closest I think you could get as far as would be war movies. Just because everyone is kind of the everyman, unless for whatever reason the plot focuses on one person. It's one reason I love Fury, is because it doesn't really, what happens. It's more about the crew of the tank and how fucked up they are.
But you get different personalities of
Yeah,
those.
yeah. They each have their own little archetype.
Yeah.
God, I love that movie. I want
It's
to
a great
watch it
movie.
again. Have you seen Fury?
No.
Got Brad Pitt.
It's a great movie.
Great movie.
It also has Shia LaBeouf, so
But
Oh, God.
it
he
works.
does good.
He does
good. I feel like we have to qualify that. It's actually a good movie, despite Shia LaBeouf, but Shia LaBeouf's actually good in it.
Yeah, he's in a role that works for overacting.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that to the having a plot without any archetypes, the only thing I can think of that kind of fits that is sometimes like psychological thrillers or hold on,
You're gonna have to
looking,
explain that.
you're out there looking at me like I'm
real
crazy.
curious and
Or
interested
I don't want to say scary.
Don't say or. You gotta keep going with this.
Okay.
I love that we just kind of looked at each other.
There's
on
a
that one.
movie I'm thinking of. You probably have never seen it. It's called Hush. It is available on Netflix, I think. But it's about a woman who's deaf, who it starts out just her like cooking dinner in her home, trying to cook, realizing she can't cook, and like having a friendly chat with her neighbor who comes over, trying to like learn sign language with her and be neighborly and blah blah blah. And then it quickly turns into a man trying to invade her home, cut her power, and kill her. But there's like a sense of good and bad, but there's nothing definitive about either character. One is trying to survive and one's trying to kill. Predator-prey thing. You feel emotionally like connected to it because you don't want to die and you feel like scared with her. But there's nothing definite, like striking about, like I can't think of one of these things that would describe her except maybe cunning. But I wouldn't call her a magician. You know, like I guess.
Tell us about the character. Tell us about her. What's she like?
Well, for one, she doesn't talk because she is deaf. But what she does, like the only language she exhibits in the film is within the first, I think, 10 minutes with her neighbor. And then most of it after that is her thinking of ways to escape or maim him or get out or whatever. So it's played based off of just her face and her actions, which is interesting.
I think that question 4 was a bit loaded.
I know.
I'm going to be honest, based on that description, it doesn't actually sound like a good movie, but I can see why you'd be compelled by it just to keep watching to see what happens. But I mean, you're not going to look at it like without knowing. Like if you're going to focus on a character in a movie because you're definitely focused on that character, those two characters, then you want to know something about it. And if you don't, the movie is relying on the gimmick of its structure to get you to keep watching. And the structure is predator-prey. That's the gimmick.
Right. Like even with the villain, if you will, the predator, you don't get a sense of what's his motivation. You don't get a sense of why he's doing anything or even anything about his personality. You just get this sense that he really wants you dead. And that in itself is terrifying. But you're right, the whole survival, the need to survive, that biological drive in all of us, I think, is what keeps you connected. So maybe that does connect back to Everyman, which basically debunks my own point. But
yeah, because in that situation, I think what's keeping you watching is that you're putting yourself in the place of the girl.
Yeah, you're applying your own archetype to her.
Yeah.
It's why I can't watch.
It's common with horror movies.
Yeah, why I can't watch most horror movies.
I like that one though because it is different. There is no like, it's simply her trapped in her house trying to figure out how to get away from him. I like it. I've seen it a couple times. I've enjoyed it, and it's unique in that we don't know what it's like for those who are not deaf to have to figure out a way to communicate or keep tabs on someone who's trying to actively kill you without using one of your senses. Like she has to. That's a whole nother challenge.
Yeah, she can't hear him moving through the house.
Yeah.
But,
matter of fact, spoiler if you plan on seeing the movie. Spoiler alert! Within the first, 10 minutes, that's how you know he's there, is her friend, neighbor, is banging on the door for her to see her, and she doesn't sense the banging or anything, doesn't know she's there, so it's terrifying for the audience to watch her friend literally get gutted in front of her, and she doesn't see it, doesn't hear it. And
classic Hitchcockian suspense.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, Hitchcock is all about sensory deprivation.
Yeah, he really is. He was also a terrifying, horrible human being, but that's neither the point.
Yeah, he what did he say about actors? They should be treated like sheep, something like that. Yeah. They're a vehicle for his story, that's it.
Ugh. Barf.
Wait, and he was wrong?
Well, if you fast forward a little bit to Kubrick and Shelley Long.
Oh, good God. That man put her through hell.
Shelley Duvall.
Shelley Duvall.
Yeah, not Shelley Long. Shelley Long was in Cheers.
I didn't realize Cheers was the plot of The Shining.
That would have made No, Shelley Duvall is
When
definitely
the,
better for that
when
than
the
Shelley
doors
Long.
open up, where everybody knows her name. The blood is pouring out, and you're like, oh dear God.
Oh God, the scene in the hotel bar would be so much. Now I'm just picturing that whole scene, except Jack Torrance is sitting there, and just at the corner of the table, it's Norm, raising his beer, and the bartender is Sam.
Norm! Wow.
We got to get in Movie Maker and make that.
That would be great.
Write that down.
Alcoholism isn't so bad, Jack.
Keeps me away from my wife. All right, yeah.
I'm
So
actually
I think
surprised
I
I've
think
never seen that crossover.
I can't get into most horror movies just because, particularly slasher flicks. Just no.
To be fair, that subsection of a genre has been overdone.
It wasn't good when they did it the first time, though.
No. That's why I like Scream, because there's that whole tongue-in-cheek vibe of it, like where it feels like it's kind of mocking it, even though being a part of it.
I mean, maybe a little bit. I only watched it because Neve Campbell is super damn hot.
But
I'm
someone
not
comes
disagreeing
into my
with you.
house to try and kill me. Well, I mean, they got to deal with me. They got to deal with my wife, and we're both armed to the teeth
My
and
wife.
proficient. So it'd take a little bit of doing. It'd be more like a Tom Clancy movie than a slasher film to take me out. Humble brag. So putting myself in there, it's just no. This is stupid.
Yeah.
Why are we hiding in the shed full of rusty chainsaws? I don't know.
Well, see, there's an interesting thing to talk about. Because the reason that you don't like horror movies, I think, is the same reason that the people who like horror movies like that like them. It's because for you, watching somebody be that fucking stupid is completely disinteresting. For a lot of people, to watch somebody that fucking stupid that they can criticize for 2 hours is appealing.
It is appealing. I also like the, so there's like the cliche tropes that we talked about of horror films, but then there's also, like I said, there's like sub-genre in the genre itself. Like there's horror films about like possession and demons, and there's just ones based on ghosts, and there's ones like The Shining is a good example of a supernatural thriller, but has been deemed a horror film, right? Because it's a psychological supernatural thriller. I don't know if
I would agree with that.
Yeah. So, but it redefined the filmmaking aspect of horror film. What
I could agree with that.
Kubrick did, yeah, for sure.
I'm not a horror scholar. I have to get one of my.
I think a
coworkers.
good horror movie versus a bad horror movie is one that completely subverts the tropes and makes you go,
Or at
I
least
don't know
nullifies
where
them.
this is
Does it
going.
mean something?
Right.
That's the way I look at most movies, but definitely horror movies in general. If I'm thinking, is this worth watching?
There is one horror movie that I do quite like. Alien.
That's a sci-fi movie, though.
It's a sci-fi horror.
Yeah,
though.
yeah.
It fits a lot of.
That's a horror movie before
yeah.
it's a sci-fi movie.
Aliens 2 freaked me the fuck out when I was a kid.
See?
Aliens. It's not
Yes,
Alien.
sorry,
It's
that's what
Aliens.
I know. I just
The extra S makes all the difference.
Actually,
actually
And
Aliens 2.
I actually think Aliens ruined.
that is not going to come
Alien.
across on the recording at all. It's going to sound like.
Bullshit.
I think Aliens, the one that everyone really loves and knows, kind of ruined the Alien franchise.
How
With
so?
the second movie.
Here comes the pedantic bullshit.
Coming from you.
I know the irony wasn't lost on me.
But you
continue.
you presenting that argument to two people that are quite knowledgeable in film is hilarious to us. Go on.
All right. So in the first movie, Alien, the xenomorph itself is an unstoppable force of nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't fuck with mom.
We don't know that it's mom at that point. Well, I guess we kind of do.
Yeah.
But not to the level we find out later.
Right.
Continue.
It's not a queen. We didn't know what this thing was capable of. There was so much unknowns regarding the xenomorph. in Aliens, we see exactly what kind of punishment they can take. We know they can be killed. And that it takes a lot of the horror away from the critter itself.
Yeah.
So that's why I think Aliens, despite being the more successful film, kind of ruined the franchise. Because from that point forward, it was like, well, just kill it.
Yeah, once it can be killed, if it can bleed, it can die.
So your problem with the...
I mean, in the first one, if a fucking flamethrower didn't do the job. But then we see the flamethrowers do work. You just have to have the right kind of flamethrower.
Speaking of Alien and archetypes, whip, Devouring Mother alert.
Well, we'll get into that after this commercial break.
This episode brought to you by Platonic Phonics. After a hard day of handling the rock hard, let us soften the blow with trite small talk. Platonic Phonics, banal conversations for erotic people.
And welcome back. Send our sponsors some love. They help out with the show. So we're going to get into more psychological archetypes, and I'd say they also relate to narratives and storytelling in their own way. Dave mentioned the Devouring Mother, I believe, is a Jungian archetype. Again,
Yeah.
but
it's definitely
not
actually
style.
that might be. I actually think that one finds its origins in Freud rather than Jung. Now Jung accepted it and continued it, if I'm not mistaken. I can't fact check myself at the moment, but I believe Freud actually started with the Devouring Mother archetype. And actually, I know for a fact he did, because that's the Oedipus complex. That's part of the Oedipus complex.
Well, didn't Oedipus start it?
Sure.
Did he devour his mother?
That was needlessly dismissive. I apologize.
There once was a
like
man named Oedipus Rex.
Dear listeners, you could not see my face, but I just literally was like, I guess we're going there.
I can't
Yeah,
hear
so-
Oedipus without thinking of the Tom Lehrer song.
Well, yeah. Because he loved his mother. Yeah, so the face.
Yes, my thoughts exactly.
But,
the producer is checking
Our
in.
producer is meowing once again, demanding food, and apparently racism.
Yeah. He's
We'll have to translate it
He's
from
an
French.
ethnic nationalist of some type, but I just don't know what kind.
A French terrorist.
Damn Micronesian racists. So we're talking about archetypes. Now we're getting more into psychological archetypes than strictly literary archetypes or storytelling archetypes. We're talking about the Devouring Mother.
It was actually identified by Carl Jung.
Really? I thought that was started as a Freudian thing. Hey, I got fact-checked, and it worked out.
You did get fact-checked, and it did work out.
So that is a strictly Jungian thing that did not start with Freud.
You've earned your
Now
pay,
we know.
Kirky. Good job.
And knowing is half the battle. I will continue to use that slogan until someone tells me to stop.
The other
I'm
half is
gonna tell you
headshots.
Okay.
I've already had both of mine, thank you.
But yeah, so we're talking about the train just keeps getting derailed. I
Okay,
like it, but we
Jungian-
are doing an actual podcast, so we should probably do stuff. Stay on track.
The Devouring Mother is a Jungian archetype that is, a mom eating donuts on her couch.
No, close, but no cigar. And sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, but in this case it's not.
It's not even close.
It's not. It's really not.
Sorry.
The Devouring Mother archetype is the... whenever somebody says the Devouring Mother archetype, I do think of a very specific character, and it's weirdly modern. Waterboy. His mother is literally a comedic, perfectly boiled down version of the Devouring Mother archetype. The Devouring Mother archetype is the mother who is so intent on protecting her children from anything that could possibly be dangerous to them that it makes them useless. They never develop, they never become a person that can contend with reality, so when they do finally, like when the mother dies or something like that happens, and they're left to their own devices, these children, they can't handle reality. Like, that's the problem with the Devouring Mother. That's why the Devouring Mother is the negative archetype, the negative feminine archetype.
toxic femininity.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it, I suppose.
That's not a thing. We'll get into that.
It is a thing. That is the archetype, and that is what makes it a thing.
That's a whole other podcast.
It is.
I need a bell. I need a bell to ring. Bias alert. You can use that against me too, because they do
The bias bell.
the bias bell. We need the bias bell. Yeah. So yeah, that's the devouring mother. I mean, she basically shelters her children to the point that they are absolutely fucking useless and cannot function in reality.
Okay.
She shelters them to that point.
It's almost like a Munchausen thing, like a Munchausen by proxy. You know, where
Why were you?
it's an excessive, overly narcissistic.
Whenever somebody says that children are they grew up under a rock or they were sheltered as children, that's
A
part of
helicopter
that.
parent.
Yeah. Yep.
Same thing.
See, I think more like snowplow parent.
No, that's not.
Never heard that one.
Well,
Continue.
I suppose a snowplow parent is kind of a subset of the helicopter parent. You know, a helicopter hovers, just hovers overhead and keeps, and then, you know, might do an attack run on anything that comes close, right? A snowplow parent is one that is still watching everything, but insists on doing everything for the kid.
No, see, your understanding of though you think
Yeah.
they're mutually exclusive,
Pushing-
but in the popular culture, they are the same.
If you look
No,
up
I didn't
in
say they were
Webster's
mutually
dictionary,
exclusive. I said it was a subset of the helicopter.
No, that's what the helicopter.
if you look up in the
parent is.
dictionary, belaboring the metaphor,
yeah,
yeah, a helicopter parent. That
is exactly what they do.
That stereotype is umbrellas over that description that you're.
And like I said, that's a subset. But there is a distinct difference.
I think you're trying to give more grace there than is needed.
It's unnecessarily complicated.
Yes,
I agree with Kirky on that. I can
Alright.
see why how you get to that point, but if somebody were
At
to
least
say if somebody were to say helicopter parent, everybody knows what that means, and it includes the
Right.
description that you gave.
so if you're like, oh,
If
they're just
somebody
watching
said-
them, we're like, no,
Yeah, if somebody said snowplow
they're
parent,
overbearing.
it would require an explanation.
Right.
At least there's movement with the snowplow instead of just hovering, is the difference. It's a subset, but
Right, but you can't just make up your own definition that goes against what everybody else knows, because then you're just adding confusion.
I didn't make
agree,
that
you're-
up.
Yeah, you
Yes,
pedantic
you did.
jackass.
Yes, you
didn't make up-
did.
I believe that you didn't make that up, but
Okay, fine, but you're contributing your own definition as if it's the same as what everybody else is saying, and it's not the same thing.
I don't really care about all that stuff. My only point is that most people don't know what the term snowplow parent means when helicopter parent covers that already, and people know what that means.
some people have heard of snowplow and not the helicopter.
I would be interested to see a cross section of people who have heard of snowplow parent but not helicopter parent.
I've seen people in YouTube comment sections asking what a helicopter parent is and saying, is that like a snowplow?
I wonder
enough.
if it's a colloquial thing, right? Like people,
Could be.
like the South versus the North, or like
Yeah.
East versus West.
Yeah, I was actually listening to, I was listening to 12 Rules today, and Peterson said, the elephant under the rug. I was like,
You
wait
mean
a
the
minute.
elephant in the room?
Yeah, see, we're used
Same
to
thing,
the elephant in the
but-
room, but it's the same thing. It means the same thing. It's just,
It's just the
But
imagery
what's
is
funny
really
about that-
ridiculous.
well, what's funny about that is the elephant under the rug actually, I feel like, embodies the metaphor better than elephant in the room.
It could be a really big room.
Could be.
All I can think is this the standard size rug? Is it going to cover the elephant completely, or is it just kind of like a dainty little hat?
Like a doily.
Yes, and I'm like,
No, it's a howdah rug, obviously.
A what now?
A howdah rug.
Howdah rug?
You don't know what a howdah is.
No.
It's when you think about, like elephants in colonial India, and they had those boxes
Oh,
on.
yeah.
That's a howdah,
Oh, okay.
and they had
That's good to know.
They had a rug underneath it. It's a howdah rug.
Now when I watch Aladdin, I'll know what the hell to call that thing.
I can show you the world.
No, that's just a regular carpet. This is the Prince Ali song when he comes in on the elephant.
Prince Ali, fabulous he, Ali, blah, blah.
Yeah, see?
Thank you. And scene. Anyway.
Okay, so you've got the Devouring Mother. What's the positive?
The nurturing mother.
The nurturing mother.
Yeah.
So a mom.
A good mom.
A good mom.
Yes.
Hey, you know what's funny? After I said Devouring Mother and how I said that it sounds a lot like Munchausen by proxy, guess what showed up on the website website?
Yeah,
Munchausen by proxy.
So I go,
Yeah, Munchausen syndrome is one of those like, really messed up things, man.
Oh, yeah.
Especially by proxy. And I think, we're not going to go into
that usually is
particulars here, but
sure.
we might know someone who does that.
I want to make sure that we get the details right. Because you don't hear nearly as much about the nurturing mother as you do about the devouring mother.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, one's more terrifying. You'll remember the terrifying one.
True.
Versus the positive figure. Our brains are
Yeah, like how
designed
you
to
just
laugh.
said.
Yeah.
Like, you mean mom?
Yeah. That seems innocuous because we know what that is like. And that's actually kind of funny coming from Kirky.
It is.
Oh!
That was not a personal hit.
Don't worry, she doesn't know what a podcast is. She's like, is that like radio for hipsters?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an apt description.
It is so the nurturing mother archetype represents the universal idealized version of motherhood. The archetypal mother is either depicted as the nurturing selfless carer who protects and provides for their offspring at any cost to themselves, i.e. a woman in film who is a mother.
That's a bad definition.
Yeah.
Okay, that's borderline.
That's not in a horror film.
You're dipping into Devouring Mother at that point.
Yeah, at any cost.
That's Devouring Mother.
Anytime you hear "at any cost," that's
No, at any
that should be
cost
an
to
instant-
themselves. No, no, you didn't hear it right. The archetypal mother is either depicted as the nurturing, selfless carer who protects and provides for their offspring at any cost to themselves.
Okay,
not
we didn't
to
let her get
others.
That far. We didn't.
No,
that's on us.
No,
Okay, that's fair
that is
enough.
the mother literally willing to sacrifice herself for the well-being of her child. That is what most of us consider a mom.
Look up some more definitions of that because I feel like that applies to both parents. Both parent archetypes.
A devouring one, though, is willing to take out the child, too, as collateral.
Well, the difference between the devouring and the nurturing mother is where the emphasis lies, what's important to them. Because for the devouring mother, it's
altruism, for sure. Because
well,
nurturing...
for the devouring mother, it's not altruism.
No, I meant for the nurturing one. That's the difference. Like, one's inherently, like, just
It's
for the good of the world. One is for selfish reasons.
Yeah, that's the trick.
Yes.
It's the
yes.
the devouring mother has excuses that make her feel like she's being altruistic, but it's actually particularly selfish, detrimentally selfish.
So, what are the masculine archetypes in that?
Oh, you've got the
Wait, you have a dad? Hey, I got y'all back.
I did up until
That's fair.
I did up until 6 years ago.
That's fair. She got you back. I am still relatively
I
unscathed.
don't even know what I earned.
Everybody gets one.
For those in the audience, Garrett's dad passed away several years ago, so that was the joke.
Sorry.
No, you're not. Not with that shit-eating grin.
Anyway, the positive, well, not necessarily positive, but the king, the father figure side of that is, you got your benevolent king and your tyrannical king, right?
Okay, I figured tyrant was in there somewhere.
Yeah, benevolent king, tyrant king, tyrannical king, same thing. So your benevolent king is the one who understands that order is necessary, but also there needs to be some element of there needs to be some understanding that chaos, that an exploration of chaos or what's beyond what's beyond order is a necessary part of having a balanced society, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you have the tyrannical king, which is, that can just be boiled down to too much order. Right? The order becomes so pervasive in society that it's oppressive. Stalin. If you want a real world example of someone that embodies the tyrannical king or tyrannical father archetype, it's Stalin. Pretty much, period.
Okay.
According to Psychology Today, which
So-
is the best description I can get for a paternal archetype,
They've been pretty good from what I've seen of them.
it says in classic Jungian terms, the mother archetype is characterized by nurturing, containing, and generative qualities, while the father archetype is assumed to be a more active and aggressive principle, dominated by intellect and will.
Yeah. Rationality is generally associated with the father archetype.
So I was gonna, and then I did it. That's why that happened. Was the we were talking about mother archetypes, and then I said masculine, not necessarily paternal archetypes.
Yeah, that is, I guess, an important distinction to
Yes.
make. Yeah. And these are like archetypically masculine and feminine, so that's not the same thing as saying that men are this way and women are this way.
Yeah, so it follows up by saying this duality, which current gender issues may question, is nonetheless reflected in our myths and languages.
Yeah. And when you boil it down to personality traits, it does. Now, this isn't an ultimate or absolute judgment as far as what's masculine and what's feminine among people, but men do tend toward certain personality traits, and women tend toward certain personality traits as
Right.
well.
I'm a
That's
tyrant.
that's by no means exhaustive, but I think it's generally, if I'm not mistaken, is generally 60% is a fairly safe 60 to 65% of the population, of the male population, follows along the general male archetype, or archetypical personality traits, and then same thing for women.
I will rule this household or see it burn to ash before me.
There is tyranny. Huh? Oh, hey! We can edit that out.
Cut and post.
Say what you gotta say, babe.
Where am I saying this?
Oh, they're in there next to the driver.
It's interesting because on the same website it talks about like there really isn't like a defined father archetype, just kind of like a generalized broad thing, like of being the provider, being the like, you know, you
Giver
get
of laws.
yeah, you get like the nature, if you will, the
Lawgiver.
nature nurture thing. You get the nurture thing from the mother and the nature thing from the father, and it's very, very generalized. However, it does have a very good understanding of a anti-father archetype or a devouring paternal archetype, and like the ones that are violent, destructive, and antisocial aspects of fathers. It gives great examples such as Jim Jones and Charles Manson or David Koresh, and also Hitler, of course.
I was really hooked. I think this is the first time we've mentioned Hitler on the podcast.
I only took 3 episodes? That's
5.
No,
We
yeah.
took 5.
Five?
Yeah.
Oh
I
my
think this is
goodness.
the first time we've mentioned Hitler.
I
I think.
we need to keep a tally going.
You should.
The
How many
Hitler count?
times is Hitler brought up in this podcast?
Yes.
We're starting the Hitler count.
We're starting the Hitler count.
On this day.
Congratulations,
March the
ladies and
9th.
gentlemen. You are listening to history being made right now.
The Hitler count.
The Hitler count.
And is this like a non-historical reference?
This is a non-historical. This
Exactly.
Is
Is that what it's
going
going to be? We're keeping
Yeah.
track of how many times Hitler is brought up in a non-historical manner.
No,
like,
just
in general.
period.
and this day in 1943, I'll get rid of that ridiculous voice, but I do like it for historical topography, not topography.
Topography.
What is this? Stenography.
Stenography.
Topography,
I knew what you were going for
stenography.
with the tiny
It's the
keyboard.
same thing. Yes, I didn't know this until this week. Total tangent. But apparently, not every single letter is like on a button.
Yeah.
No.
Like
No,
they're
yeah.
like wasted. Like I was like, how do they possibly write
have
what we're
their own
saying
language.
that quickly? And I was like,
they literally learn their own
And I go,
stenographer language.
oh my god! That is the sound of my mind blowing. Listeners at home.
There you
Yeah,
go.
it's really interesting. Who knew? Stenographers. Interesting.
Look at us. Who would have thought? Not me.
Who'd have thunk it?
Garrett is aptly mimicking a stenographer that is about to go apeshit on the courtroom. 2 stenographers. Dueling stenographers.
Dueling stenographers. That's a good idea.
That.
I think we should edit that out.
That is one thing that I miss This is totally fucking derailed off topic. That is
totally
one thing
fine.
that I miss about the new Animaniacs is that they don't have the good idea, bad idea sketch.
I loved
that sketch.
Yeah. It's
That
time
was
for
my
another
favorite.
good idea, bad idea.
I'm going to put down dueling stenographers as a
Ad.
as a.
Oh no! We can't do that. Now it's no longer meta because it's on the podcast.
No,
recording.
which is why I'm saying we should edit that out.
Yeah, but then I got to listen to the whole thing.
Okay, fine.
Now I'm gonna have to edit it out anyway.
Are we breaking
Right.
the fourth wall twice? It's
We're
like 16
we're
walls.
adception here.
Okay, fine.
Adception.
They're not supposed to know. They're not supposed to know, Garrett.
They don't know that
And
we
the longer
know
we
that
rant
they
about
know.
this, the more you got to go through it.
Yeah,
Moving on.
At least David appreciates my friend's reference.
I missed it.
I said, they don't know that we know
yeah.
that they know.
That was the best several episodes of Friends.
Now moving on.
Yes,
Yes, the stenographer has begun to retype.
we're talking about benevolent fathers and tyrannical fathers and psychology and so forth. Host?
Oh, I just wanted to see how much further down the rabbit hole we go on the.
Don't test me on the rabbit hole.
There will be a test on the rabbit hole.
Is it multiple choice or a personal
Short
essay?
answer.
Short answer?
Short answer, I'm boned. I'm better with multiple choice or essay.
Yeah, you don't have enough time to write a short letter.
Yeah.
I wonder if the reason why we don't have a paternal archetype is because for years there was a quote-unquote designed structural gender roles assigned to Western society, and now that things are starting to shift, the men can be studied from afar.
Oh no,
or
these
up close.
archetypes have existed for thousands of
That's
years.
true.
Well,
but
I think
And they've been embodied in ancient mythology for thousands of years.
that's true.
I think why there isn't a specific paternal one is because the
What do we mean by specific paternal one? What are we talking about here? Because there is
Like-
There are
paternal-
like
the feminine
well-written
one is-
books and like actual like defined attributes of maternal archetypes, but there really aren't any defined paternal archetypes.
Yes, there are.
I'm looking it up right now.
Very
Phil.
much so.
okay.
It's
then-
all arbitrary.
A lot of them actually have to do with the more along the lines of the Benevolent King, the orderly king, the king as society. I mean, that's
Well, what I was about to say was, you have the maternal, feminine ones, which seem to focus on devouring or nurturing mother,
yeah.
but and then the masculine ones, the paternal ones that we found, the attributes that would make a good father would also make a good ruler.
Yeah.
So, kind of summing up what she's going into without the bias.
So I'm sorry. What's the issue we're having here?
Well,
Because it sounded like the issue was that we didn't think that there were defined paternal archetypes, but there
no,
are.
there are. I'm not saying there aren't. But it kind of has to do with that that hierarchy that is thousands of years old, where a female ruler is a kind of an oddity.
Yeah.
In Western society and civilization.
Even
In most
as far as I know, in
civilizations.
Eastern society as well. I mean, as far as I know,
Yeah.
what are some societies in history that have been traditionally matriarchal?
Polynesian,
Yeah, the only ones that I can think
and
of were
there's a few
Polynesians.
nations or tribes in Africa. I think.
This is going to sound really, really awful, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. Any successful ones?
Yeah.
Okay.
If not uprooted by colonialism.
Well,
Yes.
depends on your definition of a success.
Right. Like what do you
Give me an example.
What do you define as success?
Okay. Those Polynesian tribes that have matriarchal systems, they have existed for thousands and thousands of years, relatively unchanged.
Okay.
So that's
That's a good metric for
a
success.
good metric for success.
Yeah.
Now, when they run up against other civilizations in like a competitive sense, no, not so much.
So there's an issue of stagnancy.
Yeah, you could say there's an issue of stagnancy, and in fact, actually, like regression on the technological scale.
Do we think that's because that it's a matriarchy?
No, I don't think that's necessarily because it's a matriarchal society. If anything, I'd say it has to do more with isolation and lack of trade. If you look at areas that have been isolated, we have evidence that they had certain tech and then lost it over time. For instance, some of those Polynesian tribes, we find in archaeological digs that they used to fletch their arrows. They used to have fletchings on their arrows. This is a good thing for an arrow to have. It stabilizes it, allows you to shoot farther.
Yeah.
But by the time, even by the 1700s, 1800s, Europeans are teaching them to do that when they get shipwrecked because they'd never heard of fletchings before, even though they at some point they had them.
Right.
Just as an example.
Okay. Well, I guess the challenge then is maybe I don't know. Maybe the challenge, even though this isn't really specifically on topic, but we're kind of there, I guess. What of this are we laying at the feet of matriarchy?
I'm not laying anything at the feet of matriarchy.
Yeah, see, that's my question. Is
you asked about success.
would these things still happen if it was a patriarchy? Is the question. What can we lay those things at the feet of?
We
don't know, right?
I don't know. You asked about success. I gave you a few different measures. In some, yes, very successful. In others, not so much.
Right. Okay.
And 2 examples of not success versus 1 example of that you could define as success. That's how that happened.
Yeah. Well, the only one I can think of that is considered somewhat of a matriarchy now, only vaguely, but wasn't always that. I mean, it was clearly a monarchy and a patriarchy, is England. But their matriarchal tendencies at this point are pretty much superficial.
See, this is where we're going to get into my next podcast topic. That has to do less with, a dedicated matriarchy versus primogeniture, I think is the word.
Primogeniture?
Yeah, the first offspring. That's just how that went. Some monarchies have male-only primogeniture, firstborn, where a woman cannot ascend to the throne.
Right, and England had that for a certain amount of time. When did that change again?
They had male favorability, but not necessarily male-only.
I thought it was male only up to a certain point.
I'm sure it was at some point, but I'm not a big... I don't know.
Or maybe it was male or female up to a certain point, and then they made it male only for a certain amount of time, and then they went back. I feel like I remember reading an article about that, but I don't remember the details of it.
We'd have to fact check that one, and we'll get into that one in another podcast.
Yeah.
There are several examples, by the way, of matriarchal societies still in today. They are often small and run by indigenous people of whatever continent they're in. But some good examples are there actually is a small place in China, believe it or not.
In China? Okay.
I know, of all places.
That is surprising.
The Mosuo, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing
really
that.
Run by the CCP.
It's in the Himalayan mountains. So it's kind of like on that, it's in that kind of in the Tibet area, so it could be sketch in terms of... No.
And all of our Tibetan listeners are like, you son of a bitch.
Whether China pays attention to them or not, I guess is what I meant.
If it's Tibetan, they're paying attention.
That's true. I regret that statement. There's also Papua New Guinea and another place in Indonesia.
They ate people.
A place in Kenya, a place in India, and Costa Rica.
Oh, Devouring Mother.
And Ghana, of course.
Actually, it was witches.
Sometimes it's amazing to me that Kirky even agreed to do this.
I usually just blaze right past your blatant shit.
That's probably a good decision. Well, here's the problem that we run into with stuff like this. Now, we're getting somewhat political, but it's like, it would be lazy to look at examples like that and lay those problems at the feet of having a matriarchy. You don't know if that's the situation or not. You'd have to dive a lot deeper to know what the situation is with something like that.
Anyone who would lay that at the feet of matriarchy, you better have some damn good reasons and research on that one. I'm not dismissing it out of hand, but I'm almost dismissing it out of hand.
Yeah. I won't dismiss it out of hand, but you do have to you're going to have to convince me of that.
I mean, unfortunately, matriarchal societies are so small due to how the world views them, but also because of...
Go on.
Well, a lot of it comes down to when their populations were larger, there probably was a more structure to it. And then because of various reasons like colonialism, climate change, wars, what have you, they've had to relocate and kind of restructure their own society. So,
I mean, do we think that we might be able to apply at least some amount of that to the fact that by and large men tend to be more aggressive, so patriarchal societies are going to be more invasive?
No.
You don't think so?
Mm-mm. No, and the reason I'd say that is if you look at the history of famous European female monarchs, they tended to start more wars than their male counterparts at the time.
Why is that?
I don't know.
Oh, I do.
Go on.
Oh,
I'm not going to make the joke. I'll let you continue.
Is this about the Red Rage?
no, it's not.
And there's the joke.
Misogyny
Continue.
aside, it's because I'm just generalizing. I think it's because women, when we know what's right, know what to do, how to fix a problem, and we come up to an obstacle, we're like, well, fuck that. I'm going to get what I want. I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to accomplish what I need. Whether society said we could or not, if a woman really wanted to do something, she's going to do it. So I think that's why there's more wars. You don't agree with me? Fine, fuck you. I'll take what... You may not win, but it doesn't mean she's not ready to throw hands.
Okay. So,
Women don't like...
reason be damned.
Women don't like being told what to do. And women also like to handle conflict head on.
So it seems like if you want to avoid wars, handing a woman the keys to the kingdom is not a good idea.
I wonder
The
if...
problem that you run into, I suppose, if we're getting into this, is can they be reasoned with?
Well, of course. I think I'm just generalizing, to be honest. I not think.
And you
I
did
know.
specify.
I
You're
know.
going
I
to
am-
generalize
Yeah.
regardless. I mean, we can't.
For sure.
I think we're all taking as a given that nothing that we say on this topic is an absolute as far as gender is
Well, gender
as
is
far
a
as
social-
sex is
Okay.
as far as sex is concerned.
That-
that's a completely different
That
podcast.
inhale right there was him about to say, shut the fuck up. We're saving that for a whole other podcast. Shut up.
I'm glad that you qualified it with that reason because that actually is the reason. It's not because I don't necessarily believe it.
No.
It's because that is a whole other
I
topic.
know what that is. That's a don't you dare do that. No,
That's a
damn it.
rabbit hole that is another
So-
podcast requires.
What started this whole thing is the matriarchal or matronly
Archetype.
archetypes don't necessarily reflect good leadership.
Well, no, yeah, that's true, but
That's-
to the same extent that masculine ones don't also.
Well-
I mean, that's
Right.
why you have the tyrannical king, right? That's why that's
Well,
where you get your Stalins.
The nurturing mother, there's not much in there that shows
Well, here's-
leadership. The benevolent king, by definition, is a leader who's good.
True, but here's the connection. Reason is the connection, right? Like, rationality is the connection between those two archetypes, the benevolent king and the nurturing mother. And here's where that connection is made. With the benevolent king, this is a king who understands that you can't be oppressively orderly, right? You need to allow chaos in to a certain extent. People need to be able to learn. Society needs to be able to change over time because new things happen, right? You have to be able to account for that. That's the benevolent king. The nurturing mother has that exact same bent to her because what the nurturing mother allows for is the children need to be able to indulge in danger, right? They need to be able to go out and do dangerous things so they learn. It's the exact same thing. We need to have an allotment for the chaos of reality, right? I mean, you can't grow at all if you don't allow for that.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be that allowance for exploration. That's where those two archetypes connect.
Yeah. Okay, it just... That's good.
Garrett's retort. Yeah. Okay.
I win again!
I didn't know we were fighting.
I only do that so I get that response out of you.
One of these days, I'm going to have one of my wasters just hang over here.
Waiting to bludgeon me with it.
Yeah. So we're going to take one more break, and then we're going to bring it back in.
I have never lied to you.
Some saw a madman.
Let God arise.
Others saw a prophecy.
Let God arise, and his enemies be scattered.
A tale of velvet betrayal.
Let God arise from the earth.
This Thanksgiving,
They're going to shoot that pilot,
a massacre
but if there are children left,
will
we're going to have them butchered.
be
You'll be sorry.
felt.
You'll be sorry. Don't fail to follow my advice. Hurry, my children.
Directed by Oliver Stone.
Drink, my children.
In association with Kraft Holdings.
Drink to God.
Muppets.
Drink.
Take
Drink.
Jonestown.
And welcome back. So, into the podcast, let's try and bring everything back together. We asked a lot of interesting questions, at least we think they're interesting. We hope you do too. And I think we answered that what archetypes are, how they're used in both a literary and psychological sense, at least.
To an extent, I mean, we could go
Right.
way deeper into how they're used.
And we hardly even touched on the psychological archetypes. I mean, we got fixated on 2.
Yeah. Well, they're really,
4,
really important ones,
technically.
yeah.
So did we learn anything?
I mean, in true Dave fashion, I did more talking than learning, I suppose. It just happened to be a topic that I mean, I wouldn't say I'm knowledgeable about it, but I've read a decent amount about it, and I like talking about it and learning more about it. I like to have conversations about it. It definitely could have been a longer conversation. We could have gone far deeper down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, we could have had a 6-hour discussion on each one of these things, parsing out the little straws, I'm sure. But we did talk about kind of how they're used, and that's a very broad question on that one because each one's used in a different way in each story.
Well, maybe we can consolidate that a little bit and talk about it just a little bit more because we do have a little bit of time as far as how they're used. I mean, as far as literature goes, or television or film, those kinds, storytelling in general. Generally, archetypes. One of two things happen. Either you have the archetypes in mind and you're writing toward the archetypes, which I actually think is the worst way to go about it. Or you come up with, this is the way I teach it anyway, you come up with an idea for a type of character that you want. You iron out the things that you know about that character.
And then you use the archetype to fill out the rest.
And then you look
the
at to a certain extent, you look at the archetypes, you look at the ocean, the big 5 personality traits, you just sort of use those as a guide to understand that character better. You're discovering that character just as much as you're creating that character. Right? So you start with what you have in your mind first. And then you use those other things as a guide. That way you're not writing towards something.
Right.
Let the character play itself out. And, the big 5 personality wheel and the archetypes are going to help you understand that character better. So I think that's, as far as a practical use for the archetypes, if you're not interested in going into the philosophy of it and how it has an effect on people and society and all those kinds of things, and you're more interested in storytelling, that's the way I would say to go about it. The practical method is to... You always start with an idea for a character. You don't start with, oh, well, I want this character to be a caregiver. Like, nobody starts a story like that. If they do,
Really,
it's
they
not
shouldn't.
a good story.
I'm sure people do.
Yeah, it's probably not good, though. Usually they end up straying from it so much and trying... You don't want to constrain yourself, I guess, is the thing. You don't want to constrain yourself. You want to use those guidelines as
Well, guidelines.
guidelines, as guideposts, right? So yeah, I think maybe that's just to sort of consolidate that particular question into how can we use them pragmatically, which I think is what most people would want to know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, how does an understanding of archetypes help you in your day-to-day life?
Oh, that's a different question.
Well, you have 9 minutes.
As far as how they help you in your day-to-day life, I mean, if you connect archetypes to the personality wheel, they can help you quite a bit. Because you can look at people, and you don't want to stereotype them, but I'm saying this as a practical matter from practice. Once you understand the big 5 personality wheel and the archetypes, if you can manage to sort of cram all that in your brain at the same time, when you meet new people, you start to build that character description of them.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and I don't know if this is the same thing for everybody, but for me, if somebody embodies the archetype too much and the stereotypes too much, I lose interest. I hate to say that, but I lose interest in that person because they become predictable. It's like when you see a character in a television show or a movie, it's like, well, I know what that character is, who that character is, what stereotype they embody, and I no longer give a shit.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. It depends on if you know that character, and you might lose interest in them, but in the right situation and they show up, it's like, oh yeah, it's about to go down.
That's fair. But then they're boiled down to their stereotype, and their stereotype is what makes them useful in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So you might have that reaction, but that character on screen for any more of a period than that, you don't care. All you care about is how useful their stereotype is in that moment.
Right.
But yeah, I think as far as being able to help you in real life, it can be very, very useful because it allows you to... You don't want to assume that you already know how a person is going to behave, but everyone judges constantly.
Mm-hmm.
We have this thing about how judging is a bad thing, but it's like, yeah, good luck trying to not do that. Everybody judges all the time, and it's important. It's how you keep yourself out of danger. So you judge constantly.
Right.
If you meet somebody new, you start looking at all of those little patterns that you're used to seeing in character archetypes or you're used to seeing in stereotypes. You're looking for those things because people are pattern recognition creatures. That's what they do. And so when you meet somebody new, when you start seeing those patterns, you start building a personality of them in your head. That's not an accurate, a one-to-one accurate description or perception of that person, but it gives you something to work within. It gives you something that allows you to predict what they might do next.
I was thinking less social situation, more can you use these archetypes to kind of analyze yourself?
Oh, yeah. Talk about that, because I talked a lot.
Well, I just asked the question, man.
It wasn't in the form of a question, all right?
Can you use these to identify things in yourself? That's what I said.
Yes, very, very,
Okay.
very much so. Mm-hmm. Particularly if you can connect them to the Big 5 personality. If you can find those archetypes like we were talking about, or even use the alignment chart. I mean, that's a more general version of it. But you can
The alignment chart is far easier to, plug yourself into, but it's also far harder to stick to, and I don't even think you'd want to.
Most people try not to.
Right. I mean, for one, being lawful good all the time is kind of boring.
Yeah, it's
And
really boring.
You need to make allowance for chaos.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you go from lawful good to lawful evil real quick.
Well, I mean, do you have any specific questions about how you might be able to utilize it?
Well, what was popping through my head was, going back to the psychological archetypes from Jung, the Benevolent King versus the Tyrannical King, being able to identify, all right, am I acting on this trying to be benevolent, or am I just doing this for control's sake?
Yeah, I mean...
That would be how I would just kind of jump to trying to use that particular archetype paradigm in myself.
It's that question of, am I being overbearing or am I being reasonable, right? I mean, that's the question that you're running into. And I think maybe the way that you could identify whether or not, which one of those things you're doing is, okay, look at the way that people around you are reacting to those things. Mm-hmm. Like if you're living in a situation, it's not always perfect, but it's a good start at the very least. If you're living in a family situation and you notice that your wife and your kids are starting to treat you like maybe they're walking on eggshells around you,
mm-hmm.
then that's a pretty good indicator, I would say, that you're bordering on or have overstepped the boundaries of tyrannical king, I guess.
See, I think an easier one to go with, at least this is what I try to do in my own life, whether it works or not, I don't really know, but this is what I try to do, is instead of judging reactions from those around me, stepping back, looking, okay, if I were to watch someone do that, how would I judge them?
Golden rule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's been far more help to me than trying to go off other people's reactions, because I can't judge people that well. I'm a bad judge of character, and I know it.
Stepping into other people's shoes is, I think you're right on that. I think that's the most effective way to sort of view, once you understand the archetypes, that's a better way to view whether or not you're embodying one of them negatively or positively.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right about that.
Well, I think we're going to wrap that one up right there. So,
Kirky, you got anything?
I learned that a plot is almost impossible to create without at least one archetype, as it would be very boring.
You can create a plot with a theme.
You can create, yes, but it wouldn't be memorable, interesting, or...
you wouldn't care about the characters that much?
Right. I guess you can start a plot with a theme.
Oh,
you
sure.
But in the, I guess, the final analysis of the plot, there
Sure.
has to be archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they're emergent, you're gonna discover them if you didn't actively create them.
Mm.
And I would say you've written a better story if you discovered them rather than created them.
You're more of a discovery writer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have a wonderful interval between this episode and the next one you watch.
We have no idea what order we're going to put these in when we finally release them, so, that's going to be fun.
Please tune in next time where we will discuss how to eat a volcano.
One bite at a time.